Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing sustainability, deep adaptation, and compassionate degrowth in the face of abrupt climate change, or more simply put, a realistic discussion of where we're at and what we can do. So I had a lot of responses to the deep adaptation question. A bunch of really good comments. So a lot of this video, I think, is going to be reading through some of these comments. But first, just kind of wanted to discuss a little bit about the interactions on this channel. You know, for the most part, everything is really been pretty level. I've noticed the trolling is a lot less, which makes me happy. I mean, most of the interaction on this channel are just extremely intelligent and civil. I appreciate that. Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate for the people. So my Facebook, my personal page, there's quite a few people that follow me on my Facebook personal page. Realize that I do business on my Facebook personal page, and a lot of people that are my friends on my Facebook personal page don't care about abrupt climate change and don't want to know anything about it. They're normies. So please don't tag me in my own videos on my Facebook page. It just, I'm going to untag myself. I'm sorry, just because, you know, it's not that I don't want people watching this channel or knowing this news. It's just that it's too freaky for most people. You know that, you understand that. So my Facebook personal page is not a place where I really discuss climate change all that much. If I do put it out there, it's very selective, incredibly selective, just because I don't want to scare the children, meaning grown adults. Also, there's quite a few people that contact me outside of this channel through email or through Facebook or whatever. There are a few people that I interact with outside of this channel. But understand that, like, the time it takes me to make these videos and to just respond to comments on this channel is all the time I have for this channel. Outside of that, I'm trying to work. I'm trying to keep my personal life together. I'm trying to keep my personal relationships together. So I don't have any extra time. I don't have any extra time to talk to people outside of this channel. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. If I ignore you or ignore your messages, it's not personal in any way, shape, or form. I love you. I love your interaction on this channel. I appreciate your appreciation for this channel, but I just don't have time. So just know that, you know, I'm not saying don't contact me. I'm not saying don't try. I'm just saying if I don't answer back or respond, just don't take it personally and don't get upset or irate if I don't. I just don't have time. If you don't see a video on a certain day on this channel, that means that I didn't have any time for this channel on that given day. That means I was busy doing like life stuff. Frankly, I'm just overwhelmed at all moments of the day. So it just, you know, whatever I can carve out for this channel is just, you know, is all I got. Also, what I may be doing is actually some live streams soon, because I don't know, something different, something I'm interested in doing. I think we have a good group of people here on this channel. I think it would be fun to interact on the live stream side of the YouTube. So I may be doing that soon. If I do it, I will let you guys know in advance. So, you know, I'll let you know the time and all that, so you can tune in and we can do a little live stream. I think that would be cool. And have you all noticed that all of Paul Beckwith's videos lately have abrupt climate change in the titles? This is where we're at with abrupt climate change, where a leading scientist on climate change who was as early as a year ago, was, saying don't carry the abrupt climate change banner. It's too early. Things aren't that bad yet. And now every single video has abrupt climate change in the title. I think that's a good barometer for where we are at in the climate change game. And Paul always doing lots of good work. So I want to start diving into these comments. This first one is from Brian Booker. I wanted to spend most of today finishing off reading Bill Black's book so I could start reading Chris Hedges' Farewell Tour book and maybe do some things outside. My wife is not feeling well and she has decided to go to the hall, not to go to the hall this morning, so I've got to alter my plans. Since I've got some spare time, here is a brief comment on what I think deep adaptation will look like. For me, there are several givens. 1, the universe is a life-death organism. 2, humans and society are micros of this universe organism. If this is true, then our species and society are evolving. The micro is similar to fruit and vegetable plants that flower and bear fruit. Modern society has gone mad. Our hubris has convinced us that we can mold reality into whatever we want. Organisms have a design, and that is the part we can't come to terms with. There have been numerous studies. Organisms have a design. I want to read that again. Organisms have a design, and that is the part we can't come to terms with. What's the word for the what's the word for what they're trying to teach in school? Is it intelligent design? I don't know. I'm blanking out on this. Anyways, but I think it's very key to understand. There have been numerous studies that show and I'm not talking about, Christianity necessarily. Outside of Christianity, I just think that there is an intelligent design in the universe. God or no God. There have been numerous studies that show what we consider free will, that what we consider free will doesn't exist, and that the things we do are determined long before we realize it's what we want to do. It is not an accident that algorithms know us better than we know ourselves. Everybody has the will to live, and at some point in this story, everyone is going to realize we've got to work together to survive. The libertarian political economic theory of private property and individualism gets thrown out the window with climate chaos because all surplus capital will have to be used to create resilience. Trump has painted us into a corner. Monday, we will know if the markets are going to crash. ETFs are Ponzi scheme. The auto industry is hurting, and we're going to start feeling the effects from the trade wars soon. If we weather the storm Monday, his geopolitical misadventures will create mayhem after the midterms. The human species is trying to flower and produce its fruit, but maybe we've waited too long. Maybe we're SL, slow learners. Who knows how much entropy is in the system? But what's really weird for me is that it seems as though I've done this before, and it seems like I can remember this will to power or mindset that allowed us to reconnect with the macro. Moving on to a comment from Dutch Hiker. Deep adaptation, all of the above. Learn the way out of the chaos when it arrives. Also redundancy, several fallout locations, food, water storages, and knowledge of the area to replenish stuff. Escape routes, traps, solar oven, water purification, medical, herbs, drying techniques, conservation, diplomacy, defense, knowledge. Cities are death traps, but full of food initially. Getting into the outdoors might be tricky in chaos. Go before or after the horde. Best before. Stay busy, stay disciplined. That's more or less what I tell myself. I'll be positive for once. The little rodent thingy that emerged after a meteor impact that wiped out the dinos because it was hiding underground. If it could survive, then we can surely survive surface temperatures of 100 C or more. We hide in caves. Caves have a temp of about 57 Fahrenheit or 14 C, save some exceptions. Some have huge underground water basins and places to store an aircraft carrier. Some even have ice for several generations. Lots of canned beans, I guess. Wait out the heat and start messing up this planet again as soon as we can. Meanwhile, special fireproof engineering teams or robots can reverse engineer the hell out of what we have caused. On trees. I see them everywhere too now, especially the young ones. Water services running overtime and still losing. A small lake near me is falling dry. A new heat record today for October, 80 Fahrenheit, 27 C, no mosquitoes, too dry, I guess. When I run under trees these days, I look up. Last year, a branch nearly killed me. Excuse me. Also after a dry period. That's very interesting too, because I think that's, excuse me, that's also why they've been chopping off those branches. I've been seeing a lot of like branches falling off trees. And what I didn't include yesterday was a picture of a palm, a really, not a, it wasn't a regular, like a tropical palm tree, but it was a palm species in somebody's front yard had died and fallen into an electrical line. And I have a picture of it. Maybe I'll paste it in here. So that's going to start happening. If the trees don't catch on fire, they're going to start falling on people's and on structures and on roadways and on the ground. On your sound and the parrot. The sound is so good now, I was trying to lure in a bird that I thought was calling outside. Turned out to be your parrot. Derp. Oh, I can't wait for it to start calling out. We are doomed, har har. We are doomed. Squeak. Guy was right. Guy was right. Rah! Just me making a parrot sound. Moving on. This is from Carl Rosengrant. Carl says, I am living a low carbon, low ecological footprint lifestyle now. I have an ecological footprint of about 1/5 the average American. I live a much lower footprint life while still enjoying electricity, heat, and good food prepared on a gas stove. I don't have pressurized water yet because that would cost a lot that I don't have. But I only use 2 to 3 gallons per day. I set up a rainwater catchment system that collects and stores 100 gallons with 1 inch of rain. 3 times a week, I take a bucket bath using 2 gallons each time. I have a gravity feed sink that works a lot like a regular sink. All the parts were free. My house cost about $5,000 to make and is a modern looking Cape style house with about 380 square feet. It's small but cozy. It uses about 1 cord of wood to heat. I'm in the Vermont mountains. I have 2 large solar panels on the roof and 4 deep cycle marine batteries, which hold several days worth of power. I light the place with LED light strips, use a laptop, and charge lots of tool batteries with it. I have 13 acres and I'm starting a farm and possibly an eco village called Smallfoot. I plan to start a food forest and lots of raised bed gardens. I am going to make a mushroom garden this fall. So hopefully by this time next year, I'll have a bunch of shiitake and oysters. Most of the food I make is locally obtained. Food is everywhere if you know where to look. I do still buy a lot of food from the grocery store, but it is a lot less than I used to buy. I mostly make food from scratch these days. It takes longer, but I have a lot more time now that I've escaped the rat race. The surprising thing about making this leap to a low footprint life is that I don't need very much money at all these days. I only need $400 per month now for all my expenses, including food. I only get 2 bills a year, property tax and auto insurance. I have lots of friends with similar aims and approaches to mine. Today I'm going to a yurt raising party to help a couple of friends get into cheap housing in the woods. I have lots to share, but I've written a book here already, all while carefully poking at these tiny little letters in this phone's keypad. One last thing, check out permies.com for great info and forums about living sustainably. Next comment from Earth Anarchist 2112. Something that most people don't know about trees is that they actually communicate and help each other. When a tree is dug up and replanted, its brain gets damaged and it can't communicate with its neighbors anymore. Parent trees will feed their offspring and help out sick trees. The entire planet is an organism. We don't need to plant trees. We need to let trees plant themselves. They will survive longer that way. When the weather is too hot to work outside, I think nature will start to heal herself, excuse me. Our infrastructure will start to crumble. Weeds will grow in the cracks. I don't know about the trees planting themselves the way they look these days. I think we're going to have to intervene. That's just my 2 cents, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. We have a large-scale organic farm right across the road, and it was fully alive with insects and critters. They got a double harvest from it this year while the other crops were poor. We really don't know exactly how it's all going to play out. We think we do, but we have been wrong before about so many things. And I agree, we don't know how it's going to play out. And I have seen some farms and some areas doing really well, plant-wise, crop-wise, and even tree-wise, and other places just look terrible. More on the terrible side, of course, as things progress. Another comment from Earth Anarchist 2112, as long as there's something wild alive, I'm going to keep trying to save it because it makes me happy. That is how I'm coping now. For the future, I'm getting ready to run and hide wherever is safe when the time comes. I've had a bug out bag packed since I was 8. It used to be a pink suitcase with my pocket knife and a bunch of camping gear. Personally, I'm kind of looking forward to the collapse of civilization. It will at least be interesting to watch, even though I might die. Hey, we all got to go sometime. What happens after that will be better than this. I'm more sad about nature dying, which is happening now. With us out of the way, the earth will heal. It would be better if the collapse happened sooner than later, in fact. Moving on from Jay the Dcast, or I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. I have no idea. Or Jay Thadcast. BBN, aka Kevin, there is no adaptation. The pursuit of adaptation, or living until the day we die, is our lot. Detachment from the civilized world is a great idea if you have the wealth or strength to just walk away from all your social connections. In 400 BC, Diogenes tuned in, turned on, and dropped out. There was no safety net. He lived in a pot, slept on straw, fornicated with his wife in public, and died proudly as a dog. If you have wealth, find your peace off-grid until doomsday. If you have society, find your peace in your social network. You can't adapt your way around 7.5 billion starving humans. As a healthy percentage will meet you in the pantry of your mountain retreat, and they won't be the pretty ones. The Bible has some good insight on how it plays out for adaptation at the end of civilization. Hell, do the AA thing and trust in a higher power, as the alien tech could reverse it all in a day. But they would have to be done with the current wealth and power grab first. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe there are aliens just waiting in the wings with crazy technology. If anybody has read Octavia Butler's Xenophobia, crazy good book. I highly recommend. I wanted to say something about that. I mean, the thing is if you can, depending on what's going on with the weather, when a collapse happens or when things just go totally south, if you can survive for maybe a year, 6 months or a year, the majority of people will be gone probably, by then. A large amount of people will be gone by then. Is my guess. I could be wrong. Who knows? Maybe we will scratch and claw and hang on for as long as we can. Moving on to a comment from Fred Blogs, 26.7 C, an all-time record for England in October. Here in Scotland, there has been a massive movement of English people to rural Scotland as the cities of England heat up with immigration from drought and war zones. Here in Scotland, there is a 30% death of many species of trees from pests and drought. In the winter of 2016, we had no rain from November till April. This year, we had no rain from May till September. Here's the result. So I'm going to put this link in the description box, but he has many pictures of dead trees as well. It's looking the same all over the place. It is worthwhile to summarize the core elements from the text of Jem Bendell. Jem Bendell said that he had developed the outlines of deep adaptation agenda in the text with three aspects. Number one, the capacity to adapt to changing circumstances. What values do we need to keep to survive? This is more than physical preparations like getting off the grid. It is a kind of triage which is full of compassion to make hard-headed choices, resilience in a wide and social sense. Perhaps a controlled collapse of the global economy is part of this. Two, learning to let go, to relinquish. This is the degrowth aspect, I guess. To remind everyone what Bendell means by this relinquishing, I include from the text withdrawing from coastlines, shutting down vulnerable industrial facilities, or giving up expectations for certain types of consumption. Three, restoration. We need to bring back wildlife habitats as much as we can rewilding, live a low carbon lifestyle, choose the fossil fuels for essentials, share transport vehicles, think transition towns. Sorry if this is too long. Could it be the start of a map that we can agree on? All of those things I think are good elements to think about. And the last comment I'm going to read is from Osama number 5. I think the truth of the catastrophic destabilization of the biosphere is starting to dawn on more people, and they are not dealing with it well. I've noticed a lot of reckless behavior, driving crazy, etc., and people not functioning at their jobs and in society more and more. I'm noticing that too. People seem to be really just like holding on very tightly to like what they're doing, and not, they don't want to be, seems to be getting more what's the word, I don't know, manic, I guess. Just the other night in a local Mexican restaurant, a guy OD'd in the bathroom, and his girlfriend was pissed that he was taking so long to come out. She said if he didn't come out in another 10 minutes, she was leaving. Well, she left, and the police arrived, broke into the bathroom to find him dead. They just left him in there so as not to disturb people's dinner. Asian migrants are being subjected to slavery on ships that are in the process of wiping out hammerhead sharks for their fins. Trying to find some sort of life for themselves, young people are lured onto the ships operated by shell corporations and being kept at sea for 18 months at a time. Their passports are confiscated, and they face enormous fines for attempting to leave the ships. Some are actually kept in cages. Human trafficking meets slavery, meets environmental destruction, all orchestrated by large corporations, posing as mom and pop operations. The scale of this is staggering, and the corporations are able to evade prosecution by deregistering their fleets and going dark. And there's a link here. I don't know if I'm going to read it tonight, but maybe I'll read it in the next video. They are among, but I'll link it in the description box. They are among the many discarded by our so-called civilization in its quest for more. So many desperate people, so many desperate species. Greed overtook the capitalist system long ago, and it gets worse by the minute. Our dim-witted but crafty predator in chief has gone from denial straight up to it's too late to do anything, so fuck any regulations. Let's have a free-for-all for the wealthy corporations, since it doesn't matter. The economic system cannot even keep the pretense of its farce anymore. Keep up the pretense. I fear the madness will cause our downfall, but before the wet bulb temperatures finish us off. We are on the edge of a knife that will cut civil society apart. When it all unravels, the insulated, the privileged ones will know the horror of the young boy enslaved on that murderous ship, dragging hook and lines and grabbing the last value of the earth's creatures. Food will become scarce, and the people who run the mad industrial, chemical, and nuclear stew pots will not show up to tend what needs constant care to keep it from blasting into the environment. Neither will the first responders, police, fire crews, or military. Say hello to the new normal. Mad Max world. So, thank you all for, there were many more really good comments, and thank you. I'm going to quickly move on to some news items. Leslie has been wreaking some havoc in Spain, Portugal. There's a couple of articles I want to just quickly touch. This one is from, I think this was from yesterday. Mallorca, deadly storm ravages Spain's popular tourist destination. Torrential rains have triggered flash floods, leaving at least a dozen people dead, including foreign tourists. Spain has deployed military units to help rescue workers search for survivors. At least 12 people were killed in torrential rains and flash floods that hit the Spanish resort island of Mallorca. Authorities said on Thursday the storm claimed the lives of 3 Germans, including a married couple and a reporter, as well as 2 British citizens and a Dutch woman. Much of the victims of the storm, which hit late on Tuesday, were discovered in the town of Sant Llorenç, and another in Sió. Several people were still missing, including a 5-year-old boy. The situation is a disaster, and we're trying to locate survivors and help people, but everything is flooded and people cannot leave their homes, said Antonia Bauza, senior official at Sant Llorenç mayor's office. Sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Madrid deployed military units to Balearic Island to assist emergency workers as they searched for missing people and cleared the streets of debris. Spain's weather agency said up to 22 centimeters or 8.7 inches of rain fell within 4 hours, triggering flash floods on the island. Yep. And moving on, there is a zombie storm. Leslie smashes into Portugal. This is from today. And violent storms hit Portugal early on Sunday, leaving hundreds of thousands of people without power before carrying heavy rain on into Spain, authorities said. Leslie, which is a Category 1 hurricane, but weakened to a post-tropical storm as it made landfall late Saturday, left 28 people with minor injuries. Civil Defense Commander Luis Belo Costa told reporters. The region around the capital, Lisbon, and the center of the country at Coimbra and Leiria were worst hit, with trees uprooted, cars and houses damaged, and local flooding reported. Aveiro, Viseu, and Porto in the north also suffered damage, with rescue services reporting a total of 2,500 incidents. The Civil Defense Services said 324,000 people were left without electricity, while more than 60 people have had to leave their damaged homes and flee to safety. Leslie was dubbed a zombie hurricane as it first formed on September 23rd, only to meander through the Atlantic Ocean for weeks before making landfall. That's crazy. So it is verging on a month old, almost 3 weeks old. There were fears it could be the worst storm to hit the region in more than 150 years, but it weakened to a post-tropical storm before reaching the Portuguese coastline. All right. More storms causing damage. Wonder what it could be. Wonder why. Let's see. And I'm going to read, this may be the last item I read today. I have lots more to read, but I don't think I'm going to be able to fit it in here. But I'm going to read Something from the Arctic News from Saturday, October 13th. IPCC keeps feeding the addiction. The IPCC just released its report, Global Warming of 1.5C. Things aren't looking good, and instead of providing good advice and guidance, the IPCC bends over backward in efforts to keep feeding the addiction. The Paris Agreement constitutes a joint commitment by all nations of the world to keep the temperature rise below 1.5C. The IPCC should have honored this commitment by explaining that the situation is dire and by pointing at action to be taken to improve the situation. Instead, the IPCC bends over backward to make it look as if temperatures were lower than they really are, in an effort to make it look as if there were carbon budgets to be divided, and polluters should be allowed to keep polluting until those budgets had run out. This is like saying that drug junkies who cause damage and are deeply in debt should be handed over more OPM, or other people's money, and in this case, the future of all people and other species. In reality, there is no carbon budget to be divided. There is just a huge carbon debt to be repaid. The urgency and imperative to act is such that progress in one area cannot make up for delays elsewhere. The best policies should be implemented immediately and everywhere across the world. Use of terms such as trade-offs, net outcomes, offsets, carbon budgets, and negative emissions is misguided and highly misleading. Policies based on giving and trading in permits to pollute are less effective than local fee baits, i.e. policies that impose fees on sales of polluting products and then use the revenues to support rebates on the better alternatives sold locally. Here are 12 instances where the IPCC is misleading. 1. Changing the baseline set of the Paris Agreement. While the Paris Agreement is clear that pre-industrial is to be used as baseline, the IPCC has instead chosen to use the 1850 to 1900, a period when the Industrial Revolution had long started. This compromises the entire Paris Agreement and thus the integrity of us all. Temperatures may well have been 0.3C higher in 1900 than in 1750, as depicted in above image in the light blue block, and add up the warming elements, and it may well be that people have caused more than 2C of warming already, and that we're facing warming of more than 10C by 2026. 2. Misleading calculations and wording. The IPCC suggests that warming caused by people is 1C, likely to reach 1.5C between 2030 and 2052. To reach these numbers, the IPCC use misleading calculations and efforts to downplay how dangerous the situation is, as discussed further below. As an example of misleading wording, the IPCC says it has high confidence that 1.5C won't be reached until 2030 if warming continues to increase at the current rate of 0.2C per decade. Sure, if warming was 1C, and if it was indeed warming at 0.2C per decade, and if that warming would continue at 0.2C per decade, yes, then it would take 25 years for warming to reach 1.5C. But the reality is that warming is already far more than 1C, and that it is accelerating. That makes it misleading to associate high confidence with the suggestion that warming will not reach 1.5C until 2030. The use of a straight line linear trend is misleading in the first place, since warming is accelerating. The use of a straight line is even more misleading when such a straight line is then used to make projections into the future, and qualifications such as high confidence are added. 3. Ignoring the importance of peaks. Daily and monthly peaks are obviously higher than annual averages, and it's those high peaks that kill, making it disrespectful toward past and future victims of extreme weather events to average that away. NASA records that. NASA records show that in February 2016, it was on average 1.67C warmer than in 1900, i.e. a 30-year period centered around 1900. While the higher latitudes north had anomalies of up to 10.8C on land, the average anomaly in February 2016 was 2.26C. And this is before adding the 0.3C for the rise before 1900 and before further adjustments as discussed below. Conservatively, the magenta block at the top of the above image shows a rise of 1.63C. 4, cherry picking the baseline period for a baseline of around 30-year period around the year 1900. For a baseline of a 30-year period around the year 1900, the temperature rise to 2016-2017 was 1.22 C, NASA records show. When adding another 0.3 C rise for the rise before 1900, warming was well above 1.5 C in 2016 and 2017. However, the IPCC conveniently selects a 1950 or 1850 to 1900 baseline, a period when it was relatively warm, i.e. warmer than in 1750 and warmer also than in 1900. It was warmer from 1850 to 1900 due to increasing livestock numbers and forest clearing, while huge amounts of wood were burned, all contributing to large emissions of black carbon, brown carbon, methane, CO, etc., which caused additional warming during this period. So this period was relatively warm. There was little impact yet of the sulfur aerosols that started coming with burning fossil fuel from 1900. Choosing this baseline period enabled the IPCC to beef up the temperature for the baseline and then draw a linear trend from 1850 to 1900 that looks flatter. 5, changing the data. The UK Met Office's Hadcrut dataset goes back to 1850. The IPCC used this data set, but actually changed the data by averaging the data with data sets that showed a similar rise for the years after 1900, but that showed higher warming for 1880 to 1900. This enabled the IPCC to further beef up the average temperature for the period 1850 to 1900, and then draw a linear trend from 1850 to 1900 that looks even flatter. 6, cherry picking the type of data. To further support its suggestions, the IPCC uses water surface data for ocean temperature, but uses air data for temperature over land. When selecting data sets with more consistency and using air temperatures globally, the temperature rise is 0.1 C higher. 7, not using new techniques to estimate the values for missing data. The IPCC chooses not to use new techniques to estimate temperatures where data are missing. Less data are available for the Arctic, and this is precisely where temperatures have risen much faster than in the rest of the world. When values for missing data are included, the temperature rise is another 0.1 C higher. Leaving out 2016, the IPCC suggests that there was a temperature rise of 0.2 C per decade in the years up to 2015, as if the high temperatures in 2016 didn't occur. The IPCC then uses that 0.2 C rise to make projections into the future, conveniently skipping the high temperatures in 2016. Failure to properly address acceleration of future warming is further discussed in the point below. 9, failure to properly address dangerous developments. The IPCC fails to point out that carbon dioxide reaches a maximum in warming the atmosphere some 10 years after emission, which means that the full wrath of global warming due to the very high emissions of carbon dioxide over the past decade is yet to come. While temperatures could rise very rapidly over the coming decade, the IPCC keeps talking about carbon budgets without properly addressing tipping points such as the decline of the snow and ice cover that will result in huge albedo losses, jet stream changes, more and more extreme weather events, and more. The IPCC fails to point out the danger of destabilization of sediments containing methane in the form of hydrates and free gas. Furthermore, the IPCC fails to properly address the aerosol warming that will occur as sulfur emissions decrease and other aerosols increase, such as black carbon, brown carbon, etc. The IPCC fails to mention the water vapor feedback, i.e. the increase of water vapor in the atmosphere that will occur as a result of these developments. Since water vapor itself is a potent greenhouse gas, this will speed up the temperature rise even further. The developments could lead to a potential global temperature rise from 1750 of more than 10 C by 2026, as illustrated in the image at the top. 10, there is no carbon budget left. Instead of pointing at the dangers as it should have done, the IPCC makes it look as if there was a remaining carbon budget that should be divided among polluters, as if they should continue polluting the world. It should be obvious that there is no such budget. Instead, there's only a huge and very dangerous carbon debt. There is no room for trade-offs or offsets, and terms such as negative emissions are also inappropriate. All efforts should be made to cut emissions, including ending current subsidies for fossil fuel and livestock. I'm getting a lot of communication while I'm making this video. I'm sorry. All effort, while at the same time, great effort should be taken to remove carbon from the atmosphere and oceans. And even then, it's questionable whether any humans will be able to survive the coming decade, which will be critically dangerous for all species on Earth. Suggesting polluting pathways. The pathways suggested by the IPCC keep fossil fuel in the picture for many years, while highlighting non-solutions such as BEECS, the beaks. The IPCC makes it look as if coal-fired power plants could continue to operate by burning more biomass and capturing carbon. The IPCC makes it look as if transport could continue to use internal combustion engines by burning more biofuel. Instead, clean and renewable energy has many benefits, including that it's more economic. So air capture powered by such facilities would make more sense than beaks. Furthermore, electric vehicles should be supported now rather than in the year 2050. It makes sense to stop fossil fuel subsidies and to support better diets, to plant more vegetation, and to support ways to add carbon and nutrients to soils and oceans, such as with biochar and ground rocks. Many technologies have been proposed, e.g. refrigerators and freezers are now made that do not use gases for cooling. The IPCC should not have used pathways that are wrong in the first place. Instead, the IPCC should have pointed at the policies that can best facilitate the necessary transitions because the scientific evidence is overwhelming and it's the right thing to do. 12, not pointing at the best and much needed policy tools. The IPCC report fails to point out that imposing fees on polluting products is the most effective policy instrument, and maybe imposing fees on more than 1 or 2 babies. How about that? The more so when the revenues are used to support rebates on better alternatives supplied locally. The situation is dire and calls for comprehensive and effective action as described at the climate plan. So there's some videos from Paul Beckwith and Peter Wadhams, and I'm going to link this article below. That is all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.